thinking that they can get to Highway 16 from Pollard Lane, and they come down and have a cul-de-sac, they turn around. So we just want to be sure that there is some consideration made on how we're going to keep general cars from just shooting straight through into our driveway, essentially, and Old School Lane.
But as far as the privacy issue between this development and your homes, what's been presented from the applicant to put in the berm, 3 to 4 foot berm with the privacy fence, do you feel that's a good buffer?
Yes, we do. We are going to need some accommodation for how we're going to water our existing trees, because that roadway the 2 roadways that they're coming across the little berm that we have there in existence right now, that will cut that. So we've got to figure out some way to water the existing trees.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next we had David Hayes. Is that okay? So Matthew Restucci.
Thank you. Please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Matthew Restucci. I live at 7000 North Pollard Lane, as depicted here on this slide that they have. And my property actually goes around the cul-de-sac, so you can see that slight jog that's there, so it butts right up against Highway 16. Our house used to sit right where Highway 16 sits today, so we've been through a lot of problems over the years to the highway, dealing with ITD and the highway to nowhere. My major concern, I support the project as the applicant has presented it. What I would like to ask is, once they do get through these phases, that where Pollard Lane goes north of West Waverton Drive, I would like to see the county or the commission actually find a way to remove that, because they have made adequate access to our property with these other side streets into Old School Lane. Each of the owners along this along the north side there has given up 26 feet of right-of-way for the easement for everyone to access that. But to echo Mrs. Hayes's comments, is we get so much traffic coming up there. We get people from Franklin Sensors walking up around the cul-de-sac, and there's really no need for anybody to come up there. And then once this development is done, there really is no need for anybody to come up there other than the residents that are up there. So that's my only question, and I know it's not the applicant's part, but I would like somebody to be aware that because we don't get snow removal, there is a piece of North Pollard Lane that should be removed.
Thank you. Any questions? I would say that that's not in our purview.
I know, yeah, I do know that. I know that's an ACHD issue.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Good.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else signed up?
You do, Madam Chair. Next was one name only, David.
So I didn't get my last name. That's okay. I would like to speak on behalf of.
Sir, I'm sorry. Would you please state your full name and address?
David Dorrough, spelled D-O-R-R-O-U-G-H. I live at 3044 West Sugarberry Drive in Eagle. Just, I'd like to speak on behalf of Meridian Research Park. We're the entity just barely west of what we're talking about here today. If that's okay. Can I have more than 3 minutes? Can I have about 8 minutes or so?
I'm sorry. Could you repeat who you're speaking on behalf of?
Meridian Research Park.
Okay.
We're the Franklin Sensors. We're the entity just barely west of what we're talking about today.
How many other individuals in the audience would he be speaking on behalf of? 7. Okay. I think that'll be okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we are just, how do I work this? I just click on the map and mouse to, yeah, we're the entity right here, just barely west of the Central Valley Plaza that we've been talking about today. And you can see our Franklin Sensors building right there where we work right now. We started this, our vision with Meridian Research Park was that it would be very upscale office buildings. Upscale office buildings range in size from 5,000 to 26,000 square feet. They'd be upscale. It'd be first-rate office buildings. When it's completed, it would be about 100,000 square feet of Class A office space. And would ultimately, with 100,000 square feet, it would ultimately house about 500 employees, 500 plus employees, various, could be call center, could be research, could be engineering things, could be light industrial. We designed it with ample landscaping and excellent circulation and traffic flow. And as with any business, access is very important, and it is for us as well. Access, we designed it very carefully, so we would be actually lined the entrance to our property with the access road. As you can see, they're kind of in the middle. The entrance lines up perfectly with the access road, so it's easy to get in and out, and we have excellent circulation because that's important to us as is anyone else. And we wanted this to be an asset to the community. That was important to us. We wanted this to be something that people would be proud of, and so this is our first building. This is the building that we work out of, the Franklin Center building. You can see it's an upscale office building. A lot of office buildings might have a 3 or 4 foot high window. Our windows are 10 feet tall. They're very big, very majestic. Gives it kind of a stately appearance. We use lots of decorative ephes to make it look classy and tastefully done. And we intend all the entire project to look like this in the future. Maybe not exactly like this, but to have similar to this style and character. When we designed it, also we designed it for good flow. You can see that the Levi Lane there. This is we lined it exactly with our entrance. We made a big entrance. I think 24 feet is kind of a standard minimum. We designed it 50 feet wide. Even the internal flow is, we have 35, 40 foot wide drive aisles because we wanted it to be. We wanted to have good flow and be an upscale place. One thing that's nice about it is it just creates a lot of reverse commute jobs. That's one nice thing about it. When we were driving, the traffic, typically rush hour traffic in the morning, everyone's heading where the yellow arrows are in there, the yellow arrows. When people go to work at our place, we're on the green arrows. We watch them sit still, and we have good flow. So it creates a nice, eases the burden on our roads by having it in a reverse commute position. When we first bought the property, one thing we noticed was the access road, and this was the access road that was designated. This is a piece of land. This is an agreement that was signed between the landowner and ITD back in 2013 to provide this access road. And this is the land. That piece of land that's highlighted in yellow is a piece of land that was owned by ITD at the time. Where, oops, what am I doing here? Where it was understood the road would ultimately be built. So when we went through our development, we lined up with that road. We lined up our entrance with that road, so it'd be a nice flow, because access is important to everyone. It's important to us too. And we went through the zoning process with Ada County, and this is about 3 years ago. We got approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission in January, and then through the full board of Ada County in February of 2016. So then at that point, we moved forward with design. We were ready. We were all approved. We understood where everything was, and we moved forward with getting all the rest of the designs and architecture and conditions in place to begin construction. Shortly thereafter, I just have to make this advance. This is about 2 months after we got our approval, we got a notice from Brighton that they decided that they owned the land around there, and the road hadn't been built yet. They wanted to move that road, and they wanted to shift it to, you can see from the blue location with the X's, the red location. And we initially pushed back on this. It's like, hey, we already went through our zoning. We planned around this road, and ultimately they were quite adamant that they needed the road in this location. And ultimately we said, okay, we'll pause. We'll go back and get zoned again. We had to go through zoning again because we needed to re-architect our complex to match the location of the road. So this is April. A few months later, we went back to zoning again with Ada County, and we realigned the road. So you can see the old road location, and then we realigned the whole complex. And we were approved then in September of 2016. Then we moved forward again. Okay, we're good. Let's move forward with getting everything in place to build our office park. Then I was driving down Chinden a few months later, and I saw them constructing a road, and I thought, well, let's just make sure that we're still lined. And I got a notice from ITD that the road is actually built in a slightly different location than what we thought where the road was going to be. So we once again, third time, went back and said, okay, now we know where the road is. The road is now built, so now it's a county road. We understand where the road's going to be. We can confidently go forward with our complex. Finally, we can finally do it. We once again realigned, went back to the zoning a third time with the Ada County, got approval in January, about 2 years ago. Began construction a few months later. Took about 8 months to build the building. We moved in about a little over, just a hair over a year ago. So that's, this is kind of a summary of what happened. You can see the yellow is kind of the first alignment that we had. That's kind of what we thought would be the original. And that shows where, then the yellow building shows what the building we lined up with it. So that was kind of, it's right in front of the entrance. So the entrance lines up with the first building. Then you can see in red, the second alignment that, the next alignment we had, and the second zoning. And you see in green, the third alignment, which is actually where the road got built. And then recently, we have Brighton has proposed a fourth alignment, which is too late for us to change. We've already built our building. We're already locked in. The entrance is there. So that's kind of our difficulty with this situation. I noticed that around Meridian, there's lots of places where development happens, and there's an access road. Here's one that's that's Paramount subdivision. Here's one that you can see here. There's a subdivision gets built, and there's an access road. And kind of, I think most people think that when an access road gets built, when it's a public road, it's a county road, it's gonna be there. I can count on it being there. And I just kind of wonder what would happen if hypothetically someone said, I want to put a hospital or medical center right in the middle of that road, and now everyone has to drive around it. I think that would be kind of troubling to a lot of people, and I would hope that something like that would not be approved. There's a lot of other ways that Brighton can do the subdivision and keep that road in place that we counted on. Here's one that this is the first one we saw this. We saw this in on KTV.com. It was published other places, but their first incantation had that road nicely. They kept the road exactly where it is, and yeah, there's lots of ways that they could do this without negatively affecting their neighbors. So in summary, we want Meridian Research Park to be a first-class office park. We want it to be a first-class place. We've been careful and tried to do our best to make that happen. We did go back 3 times to make sure we were aligned with that road. We were delayed several months. We needed a new building. We were delayed several months as a result of this. The location of the road was, as built, was chosen exclusively by Brighton. There's no compromise on our part they didn't compromise with us on that road. That road, they chose that location 100% by themselves. That's their location for the road. It's now a public road. We didn't begin our construction until it became a public road. And we would like to request that road remains in its current location. We believe there's a lot of ways that Brighton can adjust. There's lots of ways that land can be used without having to adjust that road. So I thank you for your time. We're very grateful for your time and being here. I know you do other things. We're very grateful you're taking the time to be here, and we're very glad we have this process that we can discuss things. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Do the commissioners have any questions?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Casanelli.
Lots of questions tonight. Mm-hmm. David, can you go back to that slide, or Sonia, if you're running it, can you back up to the slide that shows there's about 4 different overlays on that road? Who's running?
Oh, I can do that. Oh, let's see if I can do that.
If you're running that, if you can.
There we go.
That one right there. Okay.
This is all approximate too, but it's close. This is close to what it was.
Okay. So where is the road right now? Is that the green?
The green is what got constructed.
The green is what got constructed and what is there right now.
Right.
The blue is what.
That's what they have in their plan right now. They have a road that goes way up there right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional questions? So. Am I to understand correctly that there's not currently access from Pollard? Is that right?
The green road there feeds into Pollard. It actually is named Pollard right now. So this road doesn't.
But I mean from Chinden. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear.
The Pollard Lane does not. Where you see Pollard Lane on the left there in front of our building, that no longer connects to Chinden. You have to take the green road in.
I'm sorry. Would you repeat that?
Yeah, where Pollard Lane is incorrect. It's now been cut off. That's been severed. You have to take the green road to access Chinden.
That's what I wanted to understand. Yeah. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Holland.
One question to, I think, ask what you were asking is where the green road comes in and turns into Pollard Lane. This might be a staff question, but is that where the proposed access entrance would be for the hospital facility as well, where that entrance currently is, or is that a new entrance to the east they're proposing?
This access is I think that's what you're referring to?
Yeah.
That access is, that is no question about that access. That everyone agrees that green line or that line is the line. There's no issue with that. It's just the east-west.
Great, thank you.
Can you, I apologize, could you state that, though, in a paragraph? Because we do have folks that are listening by recording, and they can't see what you're pointing at.
Okay, let me see if I can say that. I think the current access off of Chinden, which is currently named Pollard Lane, there's no proposed change to that by Brighton or anybody. Is that clear enough?
And there's not an anticipation that I don't know, I know that you have the engineering finished, and I understand you're not wanting to go back through the approval process again. But there isn't any kind of anticipation that you would have a second entrance up where their new proposed road is?
A second what?
A second entrance. Have you made the consideration of having a second entrance to your commercial development where the new proposed road is? Is that not something that's, I'm just wondering.
I mean.
I don't know what you have already discussed or considered.
Yeah, I mean, we did put a second entrance on, and we could put a second entrance up there, but it's not the main entrance that we, that for the complex. It's kind of the back door becomes the main entrance. Is kind of what happens.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Steele.
So essentially what you're trying to ensure here is that instead of the green road as built right now, you want the red road. Correct.
No, we would prefer the green road is what we designed around, and we would just assume keep the green road forever.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that's.
It's just that the Brighton plan anticipates vacating that road, and their plan doesn't show that road anymore.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else signed up to testify?
Madam Chair, next is Keith McGregor.
Sir, had he already spoken on your behalf?
I just need 3 minutes real quick.
Okay. Please.
On the last slide presentation.
Madam Chair, clarification, is he one of the 7 that held up his hand?
I'm sorry, Mr. Wardle, I cannot hear you.
Madam Chair, members of the commission.
Yes.
When David got up and testified, you asked for a show of hands as
Correct.
who was talking on their behalf, and you gave him the extra time. This gentleman raised his hand and forfeited his time to David, so
I thought that was the case.
that was the case. So if you want to extend them more time, then that's what.
Yeah, we didn't understand that. So there would only be 4 people forfeiting their time for David in that case.
I use 8 minutes.
You guys can't be on record, but you're just talking on the audience. Not on my.
Sorry. So there was a misunderstanding on our part. We would only have 4 people supporting David in that case, because there are 4 of us who would like to talk.
Bill, what is the appropriate, we haven't run across this, what's the appropriate
Madam Chair,
procedure with
members of
this?
the commission, it's your call.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd recommend that you acknowledge the miscommunication and make an effort next time when people yield their time that we make it clear. I want to have a complete record. Unfortunately, I'm here my main purpose is to make sure it's a fair hearing, and I think there'd be a perception of unfairness if we don't allow the people who misperceive to talk. So apologize for the additional time that may take you, but that's part of why we're here.
No worries at all. I just want to make sure that we're following proper procedure. Thank you so much. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Keith McGregor. I work at 6675 Pollard Lane. I actually live near the airport and drive in on a wonderful commute that is against traffic. On the last slide presentation, one down from that. Oh, one down, sorry. That one. No, up. Oh. That one. There we go. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I work for Franklin Sensors and make the world's best stud finders. My name's Keith McGregor. I do a lot of our outbound logistics, so I make sure semi-trucks come in, we fill them up with stud finders, they go out to Walmart, Costco, places like that, and we sell stud finders that we have patents on, and we've been doing very well as a company. So this is the current situation, as you've seen described. With the it's a pretty good situation for us at the moment. Obviously, we have development coming, and we like development coming. It means we get internet. It means we get connected to sewer potentially. So there's good things coming here with Brighton. On their first plan that came through, there was one left-hand turn. And I just wanted to make a point about left-hand turns with my time, and that is that the NYC Department of Transportation did a study from 2010 to 2014, and they found that left-hand turns cause twice as many fatalities as right-hand turns. They also found that senior citizens, which is the vast majority of what the complex to the back is going to be, are the most at risk of being killed in a left-hand turn, with the average age of a left-hand turn fatality being 67. The average age of a right-hand turn fatality is only 50 years old. Also, it's even worse for bicyclists and pedestrians. They are 3 times more likely to be killed or injured in a left-hand turn than in any other situation, particularly right-hand turns. So this was the proposed plan. This is the current plan. As you see, there are 3 left-hand turns. If you use the main path, which is the one with the red dots, you would have 2 left-hand turns into our facility, 1 left-hand turn back out. And that's going to create a worse scenario, at least potentially, than before. You've also got a bunch of people in the medical facility, and they're going to be, visiting their injured relative, not in an emotionally good state, using the walking paths nearby. And now I've got semi-trucks bringing in for Franklin Sensors. We have UPS delivery trucks. We're averaging 5 trucks a day. That's 1.5 semi-trucks. I think our busiest day so far has been 8 to 11 semi-trucks. It's pretty rare that it gets that busy so far, but we are a growing company. We do have some products again in Lowe's. We're working on Home Depot at the moment, and that meeting is looking really good, among others. So we are growing in our patented stud finder technology getting out there. And we also would have plans in the rest of the park to put in another potential 500 total employees, potentially depending on what comes in and what is built. So you're talking about 500 people plus trucks and businesses coming in and out of this facility, making left-hand turns. If they leave for lunch and come back, that's 2,000 trips. That's a lot of extra traffic going right through a hospital. So we kind of wish the hospital was switched like the original plan and not something that we had to come through with our employees and traffic.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Do we have anyone else signed up?
There are additional sign-ins. I'm not sure who is who, so I'll read the names. Owen Barnes.
I gave my time.
Yielded time. Jacob Thomas.
I also
Yielded time. Michelle Doro.
I do want to apologize. I did not understand the procedure. I thought my time was only forfeited if he went over the number of minutes. And since he only spoke for 10 minutes, I hope it feels fair that I'm speaking still, because they had 4 people. Anyway, so I apologize. I did not understand that.
No,
I only
that's okay.
have about a minute of comment anyway. So.
Would you please state your name and address for the record? And if you did bring some handouts with you, if you would please give it to Chris.
It's just a picture of this for my reference. So my name is Michelle Duro. I live at 3044 West Sugar Bay Drive, Eagle, Idaho, 83616. I am a director at Franklin Sensors and a co-owner with David Duro, my husband, of Franklin Sensors. And just a quick comment I wanted to make on this was just our desire to keep a stately entrance that we currently have from that area. As Meridian Research Park, which we intend, as David showed, to develop, will eventually become part of Meridian City. It should create great economic growth for the city of Meridian, and our economic growth and the amount of growth we have will be greater as we're able to have a better entrance for people. In addition, with supplies that come down our road, I think Keith mentioned really briefly having the traffic of the trucks and things that come. Right now we have a straight entrance into our building that allows to avoid any problems, because it can just go straight in and makes a nice little loop within our parking lot to the loading dock and then straight back out. The proposal right now would add a lot of extra turns for trucks that are bringing supplies to us. And so we would just ask that you would consider leaving the public road there, and we would fully support Brighton with any proposal that's in this. This all looks beautiful, the things they proposed. We support those things. We just want to keep that road. So thank you so much.
I do have a question for you.
Sure.
I would assume that you have had some conversations with Brighton or expressed your concerns to them directly, and if so, what has been, can you give us some history?
When we first developed, we tried to find out the location of the road, as David commented, and And I do understand. It's hard when you're not sure what your development is going to be, and they were hesitant to put the road in it needed to be there because they cut off the access from Chinden due to Highway 16. But, you know, we tried very hard to work with that. We delayed our project almost a year, and lots of rent expenses in the process, you know, like $90,000 of rent expense, and plus all the time zoning. And then in the most recent one, when we saw this in the newspaper, we offered our support, and then they reached out to us for a meeting and told us about the plan they have now, and we said we oppose that. It causes a lot of trouble, but we would really support something with this road. But we haven't had any attempt to design something else. They've decided against what was in the newspaper, but there's been no reach out to us like there have been to the other neighbors in this process. But we would be very happy to work with them and approve anything. I mean, like stuff like this, it looks beautiful. I think a senior citizen center would be fantastic for the community. I think the hospital is a fantastic idea. I don't live too far from here. We might use it ourselves. I mean, I think more office buildings, it's great. I mean, it all looks very beautiful. Brighton does a great job. I think they're an asset to the community. And the idea you gave about another access point is a great idea, and we may end up having another one, but right now we are only authorized for the first phase of our development. We have one other building we can build, but it'd be several years before we'd have to go through zoning to get that other access. So it's not something we are allowed to build yet. So it might be several years before we could do something like that. And so that's the issue. There'd be several years that we'd be kind of driving all over the neighborhood with, supply trucks and things.
I really appreciate that clarification. Thank you. Do the commissioners have any additional questions? Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Madam Chair, next is Karen Garcia.
My name is Karen Garcia. I work at Franklin Sensors 6675 North Pollard Lane. I also live in Meridian at 2031 West Tango Creek Road. That's yes. So very quickly, I know we are short on time, so I will use the time wisely. I did want to let you know who we are. Give you a quick introduction of what we do. Franklin Sensors, we make the world's best stud finders. Anywhere that you go and anywhere that stud finders are rated, you talk about Walmart, Costco, Lowe's, Home Depot, we are the #1 rated. Amazon, for example, over 3,000 reviews, and we are the #1 rated stud finder everywhere you're sold. And we proudly say that we are made here in Meridian, Idaho. We bring a lot of jobs here to Meridian, and high-end jobs even down to the production level, which is also incredibly important to us. I'd just like to reiterate that access is incredibly important to us. We delayed our building process from the time that we first got the first approval to the time we broke ground was 1 year and 2 months that we delayed, because that access is so important to us, because we have the research park coming. So I propose to you that access is there's a direct correlation between access and the perceived value. Let me give you an example. If you were to put a building, let's just say a Costco for the sense of an example, if you put a Costco and you put another building next to it, the perceived value is very great. However, if you take that building and put it behind Costco and you shield it, the perceived value is that the company itself or the city does not value that company as much. We went in to put in our company in a location in good faith that road would be there, because we waited, again, 3 times when we went through approval. Also, for future development, there's going to be companies who want to have visibility. They want signage. They want it, that will attract higher end jobs. We have a traffic flow. And I also say, with the proposal of the hospital on the right, which we are, again, in favor of, we're in favor of development, we are concerned about the flow of our traffic, of commuters. If the hospital is on the right and you have an emergency situation, the traffic will go to the right and we will go to the left. I think if you have 500 commuters coming in and you have an emergency situation right at rush hour, that is a problem. So when we developed, we chose Meridian. And that was important to us for several reasons, as listed here, but I would like to request that you also choose us. We chose Meridian because of the development that's going on, and we ask that you also choose us because this is an important feature to us. So, thank you.
Thank you. Chris, do we have any additional?
Your final sign is Jay Paxman. He yielded his time.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to testify? Please come forward.
My name's Lucretia Wilson.
Ma'am, please come forward. Sorry. No, that's okay. I know most folks aren't used to this process. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name's Lucretia Wilson, and I work at Franklin Sensors at 6675 North Pollard Lane in Meridian. I oppose this project because it changes the alignment of our road to work. Franklin Sensors followed all of the right procedures to building our building where it is and went through zoning multiple times, as they have said. And the building is where it is and the road to it for easy access for the employees to get to, plus our truck drivers. Because we have the big diesels, and if you have roads that they're gonna have to turn this way and turn this way and turn this way, if anybody knows anything about semis, you know it's not that easy. It's hard for big trucks. So the access we have now is easy for the employees to get to, even though Chinden's pretty busy, to turn into and go down to work. And it's easy for our truck drivers to get to because they can see our building and they just have the one turn to get into. We love Meridian and we love being here. So I ask that you let our road stay where it is. I thank you for giving me your time.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to testify? No? Okay. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing for Pollard Subdivision H201? Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. We need the applicant to come back up.
I'm sorry, I forgot my...
No, you are fine. My apologies. I would imagine Mr. Wardle has a few things to say.
Madam Chair, once again, Mike Wardle, Brighton Corporation. Most of the discussion is actually going to be heard by ACHD when this project goes to them because the roadway issue is theirs. Need to talk a little bit about the history. We were under obligation, and this may take a little bit longer than the 5 minutes or whatever because of the number of items that the group has brought up. But we were under obligation by ITD to close off the existing Pollard connection, which they did a temporary when they did Highway 16. There was a time limit on how long that could remain. And so we were working with the Old School neighborhood to build that roadway, but basically to take it up to Old School Lane and create an entrance that would give, frankly, diminish Pollard Lane in and of itself, because at that point in time, there were no plans, no anticipation of what was coming. When Franklin Sensors went to the county to receive its approvals, we were in a position at that point to have to do something in order to meet that, but we didn't have any plans. And so all we did was, from the original alignment, which is the dashed line, but not the hard filled line. The black filled in line is where it actually was constructed. We had to look at, okay, if we're going to develop this in the future, what's the template for uses that might be along Chinden, but kind of with residential behind it? And so we did a 2-unit deep kind of a little office alignment similar to what Franklin Sensors has shown you for their overall project, but no plan. And in fact, that roadway, which is a rural 24-foot roadway, has no utilities in it. It doesn't have drainage facilities. It simply was a roadway to get Pollard connected to Levi. We didn't have a plan. That's why there was some flexing in where that particular facility was going to be located. Now, when they showed you the plan that was first put in the newspaper, and that was just a nice concept. And it was not our plan, by the way. It was a plan that was put forth by a different entity that came to us and said, could we work on this particular project or this property? Well, when we met with staff, we found out that the uses that were in that proposal, which had the flex space on the west side and the hospital on the east side, did not comply with the comprehensive plan. The mixed-use interchange to the west toward Franklin Sensors was where the medical facilities and so forth were identified. The mixed-use community on the east side was where more of the office-type uses. So we had a comprehensive plan conflict. So through several discussions and iterations, we came up with the plan that we have now because it conforms to the comprehensive plan. Interesting that nothing changes in terms of access for Franklin Sensors except the front door. They will have a 5-lane collector commercial road coming off Chinden. They will have a commercial road east-west. They've noted that there is circulation around the facility as well. But right now, they don't have any signage on their building. Nobody knows what they are. They don't have walk-in customers. They're a production facility. We are maintaining their access. They're not losing access. And in fact, we're probably enhancing the spec space. When you saw that other dozen buildings or so, we're probably enhancing the value of those spec buildings over what they are using for their simple production facility currently. So we had this planning process ongoing that came up with the plan as it currently, as it was actually submitted, not the one that was in the newspaper 6 or 7 months ago. The other interesting thing about Franklin Sensors Business Park is, and they mentioned that they're authorized only for the first phase. What they didn't mention is that they're limited to their first phase. They're there on a septic tank and a well, and I suspect that they do not have fire flow. So what we're bringing to them is we're maintaining access. Yes, the front door shifts, but it shifts because we have the opportunity to plan our site just as they had the opportunity to plan theirs. But we're also bringing sewer and water in order for them to be able to bring their whole plan to fruition. Now, another interesting point, if you look at the city's sewer comprehensive plan, you would see that this area has to be served by a lift station. It's at the extreme northwest corner of the city. The city's plan shows the lift station on their property, and frankly, that's probably where it should be. But knowing that it likely wasn't going to be an easy negotiation, we are putting it on our property so that we can get it built with the very first phase of our construction. And we will then, through that process, be allowing them the opportunity to extend sewer to their entire property, water to their entire property, build out of their entire property, which they cannot do today. When they went to the county, we were there to oppose their project, not because we opposed the use, but because it was premature. And we told the county commissioners at that point that build it, but they need to work with us and with the city to get the utilities extended there. Well, their statement to the county basically was, we'll get started on a well and a septic tank and wait until somebody brings us the utilities so that we can finish our project. So that's kind of where, you know, this whole process has been. It certainly hasn't been a good workable situation, simply because they felt that we were not considerate of their needs, but we didn't know what we were planning for at that point when that rural roadway section was constructed. It was our best guess. And it certainly doesn't fit now the long-range planning that has come forward that has brought us to the point of these applications. So we acknowledge their concerns and their frustrations. When the Ada County Highway District considers this application on April 4th, I believe is the date, there is also a requirement that there will be, of necessity, a change in the right-of-way and in consideration of relocating this roadway. I would note that even though the roadway was approved by both ITD and ACHD as it was constructed, it's not constructed in public right-of-way, except for the part coming off Chinden. That roadway is actually on our property. It's not in public right-of-way, that east-west alignment. So, Madam Chair, back to the simple point I believe that's before the Commission tonight is, do you concur with the conceptual plan that has been proposed, with the annexation, with the zoning, and with the preliminary plat request? And if you do, we ask you to forward that affirmative recommendation onto the City Council, where we will conclude that and then ultimately work out the transportation and access details with the Ada County Highway District. I would obviously stand for additional questions that you might have.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Holland.
There were some concerns voiced by the neighbors to the north too, and I'm wondering if you can talk to some of their concerns as well.
I appreciate that. I kind of got focused on, as Mrs. Hayes and Mr. Restucci both talked about, we have actually worked extensively with them, and we are on paper and electronically noting that all of the issues that have been raised and concerned, that we would deal with those. For instance, the fencing and the berm. And I believe an earlier question in our presentation talked about when the roadways to the north would be constructed. We anticipate doing those with our residential project, although the berm and the fencing will be done before that. There will be a stub. The street will not be allowed to go connect on through until they are completed, and at that point, the question then of signage that would identify that as a private lane. That's a consideration that we'll have to work through. We probably would put a sign back at the intersection of Treecrest and both Schwenkfelder and Restucci, the north-south stubs, put a sign back there noting that, you know, private roadway ahead, because it's a concern. I don't know quite how to deal with that, but we'll work with them and with the Ada County Highway District. Controlling the traffic is always a consideration, and that's why we had initially proposed those two stubs to be private so that they could be controlled. That's an issue that we'll just have to work through, but we're committed to do that with the neighbors to the north. I don't know of any reason that there would be any change in their addressing and so forth, because they would still have the Pollard Lane and the Old School Lane, and several of them, I believe, have different addressing. Mr. Restucci talked about potentially vacating Pollard north of Waverton. That will be done through an application to the Ada County Highway District, and to the extent that it's realistic, because one of the items that ACHD is talking about is, if you look to the northwest corner of our property where those that little street stubs right now, I believe they want that connected through to Pollard. So at least from that point, wherever there's a public street connection, that Pollard alignment would have to remain in place. We would support anything beyond that the Ada County Highway District agrees that could be vacated. So we'll support the request when that comes down the line, but that will be an action by those property owners specifically. And Mr. Restucci is probably the most involved one in that particular case. Again, all of those issues will be ACHD, as will, in fact, the alignment of the east-west roadway that we are proposing now to relocate to the north. It will extend their drive some 900 feet, going that far, that much for 400 to 500 feet to the north, same distance east-west. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the rest of their buildings that they propose in their plan are going to be literally front doored by this particular new commercial roadway. So it actually provides some speculative benefit in their long-range plans. I hope I've addressed those issues and concerns, but I just want to go on record with both the Hayeses and Mr. Restucci that were here this evening that all of the commitments we have made will be honored, and we will continue the dialogue, and we will make sure that everything that we can do to control access to their properties is done, knowing that potentially in the future they may in fact develop portions of their property as well. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Any additional questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Seal?
Just in the vein of good neighbors, I mean, is there anything you would be considered, or would you be in consideration of trying to speak with them as far as maybe trying to get them to put in the sewer septic systems, the water systems, defer some of that cost to you in favor of reworking, a more suitable entrance for them, or keeping the entrance the way it is?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Seal, that roadway has to get, it's a throwaway road. Again, there are no utilities in that roadway, and if you tried to align everything there, it would be a total rebuild. But that's not where the roadway works for what we propose to do. They still have access. There's no limitation on the Pollard frontage that they have. So access-wise, yes, a little bit of additional distance and a couple of turns, but again, those turns relate only to their existing building, not to the buildings that they're proposing in the future, where this Waverton Commercial Street east-west would go literally into the front door of the rest of their complex. So will we have discussions with them? Certainly. Those discussions will be by those involved in the actual development, who would be Ball Ventures and David Turnbull of Brighton. But there's been discussion. Certainly they would sit down and talk with them. I don't know that it would change the plan, because the plan is really based on the way facilities have to be constructed and the relationships of those buildings. So discussion, but perhaps not agreement.
Mr. Wardle, I have a question regarding the wording of section, go to the staff report, section 2C. You had recommended that there was a change saying depict a 20-foot wide landscape easement for the street buffer. And it looks like staff is recommending a little bit different wording to say depict a 20-foot wide common lot or permanent dedicated buffer. Do you have any concerns with staff's recommended change to that?
Madam Chair, we don't. We just didn't
clarify.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's the same with the one in the following.
With letter
Sandy,
D.
yeah.
Okay. Any additional questions for the applicant?
And Madam Chair, also I just would note that with staff's addition to F, or as may be modified through alternative compliance, that condition is acceptable as well, as staff has proposed.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, we answered all the questions for the applicant, from the applicant. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now,
Madam Chair, excuse me.
Go ahead.
Can I add something in response to some of the neighbors' concerns about the Restucci Lane and Schwenkfelder Lane
Please do.
extending to Old School Lane? ACHD has included in their staff report that the terminus of those streets be signed with a sign stating that this road will be extended in the future. So there should be a barricade across there.
Would that barricade be removed when the street were to become public, or what's the time? How does that work?
When the development of the property to the north occurs and a public street's dedicated.
Okay. Okay, that's what I anticipated.
Or I would just add that when those roadways are stubbed, it does take direct access to Old School Lane in two different locations, and it would be up to those neighbors, if they want to use those, then we would work with them to, and ACHD on that question of taking down the barricades and taking access. For instance, if you look at the easterly of those two stubs, it goes right into a cul-de-sac that they have constructed at the end of Old School Lane. And so those two property owners, which would be the Ernest and Panther and Schwenkfelder, would have direct access from that stub street if they chose to use it. So we'll work with those neighbors to determine exactly when that would be opened. And if it's constructed and they want to use it, it would be, there would not be a barricade that says to be extended in the future. Obviously, if they then develop in the future, they would have to extend a public right-of-way and a road into their properties. And Old School Lane would likely go away.
Okay. Thank you. Was that everything, Sonia? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now might I get a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
No. I'm sorry, ma'am. Public testimony has ended. Please do feel free to send in any written testimony or come and testify at the City Council meeting as well. Thank you.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, could you state the motion again, please?
It's you, Bill.
I'm sorry, I believe I made the motion to close public testimony.
Okay.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for Pollard Subdivision H20190021. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Motion carries.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Holland.
Everyone else is quiet, so I'll jump in. First of all, I want to say I really like seeing mixed-use developments because I think it's a good planning protocol to have housing and live-work units, and I think there's obviously more need for additional medical facilities as we continue growing as a community. My biggest concern with this project, I feel like I've got my handle on what the applicant's requesting as far as conditions and what we would need to do there. But I feel like there's also still quite a few unknowns, and I know as a commission our job is to try and get some of these things cleaned up as much as possible before it goes to City Council. The first concern I have is that we got an updated draft staff report from ACHD uploaded today on March 21st at 1:54 p.m., so I didn't have time to review that in detail before this meeting. And I know there's a lot of roadway conversations with this application. So I would prefer to have enough time to spend looking through that report and having ACHD, because they mentioned in their memo, it's a rough draft of their report and they're still working to complete the report, and there's a few outstanding issues that will need to be addressed prior to the ACHD scheduling this application for commission meeting. It sounds like they're leaning towards April 4th for that hearing, but I would like to see what their thoughts are on how the roadway comes through, if that affects the site plan. Some of those details I think would be too big for us to let it move forward to council without considering those. Also knowing a little bit more about the tech park that's on the west-hand side, after that some of these testimonies that came in, I've got a little bit of a concern of some of the residential up in that northwest corner, if it's going to be adjacent to the office park, just that there would be enough buffering there to protect them from noises of trucks coming in and out, using that lane for the future expansion of that park to the west. I know that's not part of this application, but certainly something to keep in mind. And that's the main one I have, is just enough time to really understand the ACHD adjustments and make sure we do our due diligence. That's where I'm going to start.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner McCarl.
I appreciate Commissioner Holland saying everything that was in my head, because the only thought I was still having was cart before the horse. I just think there's some other things that need to be vetted out, and I think that'll be, that's my big thing that's written here is April 4th, of what I heard in all this, that there's the final report coming from ACHD, and I think that'll answer a lot of the questions that really aren't in our purview anyway. I mean, they're going to have to give their blessing on it. So I agree. I think this should just be continued.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Casanelli.
I've actually have a question for staff, Sonia, on the staff report that we got yesterday. Page 9, it says in reviewing, I don't know if you can hear me, in reviewing development applications, the following items will be considered in MUI areas per the comprehensive plan. Pages 33 and 34, you jump down, I think it's about the 6th bullet point down. It says design of State Highway 16 US 2026 interchange in the adjoining land uses must give special consideration to the more scenic and environmentally sensitive area on the north side of US 2026. The more intensive land uses should be sited on the south side of 2026 or Chinden. I kind of see this as a rough draft. I don't know that stuck out to me when I was kind of going through it earlier today. I don't know that we're necessarily paying attention to that. I would like to see us focus a little bit more on that. I don't know what that will look like for this project. Overall, I like the whole concept of the project. I think this is the first draft, and I really, from what I'm hearing so far, is possibly a continuation. I think we need to see some other options. A couple other comments I wanted to make is the fire department, their comment, if I can find this and read it, they say current reliability is 77% from this station, which is servicing from station number 5. It does not meet the targeted goal of 85% or greater when we're talking about medical facilities, a hospital. Also, cart before the horse, I think there's a fire station planned at McMillan and McDermott, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know where we're at on that as far as what kind of a time frame. But if the fire department is saying, and we don't have a representative from them here tonight, but if they're saying that they don't meet their targeted goal of 85%, I think that's a big issue. Those are two of the comments. The other comment that I want to make is all of us here in Meridian, I mean, we're all playing in one big sandbox. We got to get along, and I'm not sensing that we've got some neighbors here that are doing that. I didn't like one of the comments that was made that said there'll be discussions but not agreement. I think they need to work on this project and get all the pieces to fit. The other comment from Mr. Wardle was on the stub streets was, I don't know how we're going to deal with that as far as the stub streets right now and tying that into Old School Lane. So and with ACHD's comments, I think there's still a lot to work out with this project. And I think that with time, with working with neighbors, with looking at this whole project, the homes that are in there, and another thought I had was we've got R8 going into low density right now, and I know that's county right now. I don't know what the plan is for annexing those parcels up north of where that's going to be, but is that the greatest transition too from the R8 to the low residential, the low density residential? So those are all issues that I have with this right now. I'm not against the project. I just think it needs a lot of adjustments and a lot of work on it to get it right. And I think kind of as we continue to see more and more projects coming to us, and I've said this now probably a dozen times, we've got to do it right. We've only got one chance, and we got to do these right. And there's no harm in taking a little bit extra time and getting it done right. That's what I have to say on that.
Any additional thoughts? As I'm sitting here hearing public testimony, I'm understanding the neighbors' concerns, understanding the applicant's right to make an application for what they would like to do with their property, and how do we help to encourage communication and encourage those parties to work together. The property to the west is not, it's in the county, and this is in the county, and as far as I know, that they have not put in the application to come into the city, so that's not in our purview in any way. And then, of course, as Commissioner McCarville mentioned, the roadways aren't as well, and so it really is our role here to be making recommendation to City Council for a project in its merits and in the big picture for the city as well. And so I agree with my fellow commissioners that there should be some refinement that needs to happen to the concept. I would also, while I realize that it's not a requirement, like to see some more detail on the public or quasi-public spaces, and a few of the, and I would also like to see some adjustments to the concept plan regarding the transition and building heights and whatnot that are all mentioned in these yellow boxes that are here on the applicant response. So I appreciate that, and I trust that the applicant would work on these and have some detail put into these before City Council. However, if we're going to continue and have them come back before us, we might as well ask that they put some detail into that as well. So are there any other thoughts or concerns that the Commission has to share?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Holland.
I would just echo, that was one comment I didn't make, is I wouldn't feel comfortable sending this to City Council when there's so much yellow on the page. If it was just one minor thing that they needed to work out, like where the east boundary of that office building is, or if it was just figuring out one of these things, I think that'd be okay. But there's three pretty big things that are usually discussion items we see in the planning and zoning process. So I'd like to see a little bit more about if they can get us the information about how the building on the east would sit, if they can talk about the flex space and how those roll-up doors and the buffering would come into place, and if they can talk about the open space or public amenities. I think it'd be great to have those as well.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so it's my understanding that we need to reopen the public hearing in order to continue and ask the applicant to come forward to discuss a date. So can I get a motion for that, please?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner McCarville.
I move that we reopen the public hearing in order to establish a continuance date.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to reopen the public hearing for Pollard Subdivision H20190021 to establish a date to continue.
Madam
Mr.
Chair,
Warder.
Madam Chair, Commission members, Mike Wardle, I have no problem with your direction, and I would suggest that perhaps we look at the second meeting in April that will be well after ACHD, and certainly a lot of time to work on some of those technical details that you've raised. So we're game with that.
Is there any anticipation from staff that do we think that date will work? Are we too far out to say?
Madam Chair, I think that date would work great, April 18th.
I would appreciate a date that would allow us to have a full completed packet on Monday so that we have time to review it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. April 18th.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Holland.
if everybody else is okay with it, I can make a motion to continue. Unless anyone else has any other
Do we need to
comments.
close the public hearing again first before we make the motion to continue?
Madam Chair, actually, Commissioner Holland's correct. She'll be making a motion to continue the hearing that's currently open. So,
thank you.
Madam Chair, I move we continue. I gotta make sure I've got my right numbers here. I move we continue Pollard Subdivision Project H-2019-0021 to the hearing date of April 18th for the purpose of receiving additional information from the applicant on several different items. One being the complete ACHD report after that hearing so that we have more information about the roadways and how they come into the complex and how that will affect neighboring properties. Two, that we have some more time to understand possibly about fire department needs and abilities to service this project. And three, that we can get a little bit closer on some of the items that were highlighted in yellow on the applicant's response to the recommended conditions, specifically adjusting the site boundaries of the office building that's on the east side, the flex space, layout and buffering, and what the open space and amenities would look like.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to continue Pollard Subdivision H2019-0021 to the date of April 18th, 2019. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Motion carries. I get one more motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to adjourn the public hearing of March 21st, 2019. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.